At this time, I'd like to introduce our presenter, Andy Kester, Director of Product Marketing for System Sensor. Andy, take it away.
All right, thank you very much, David. As David said, we're trying to give you guys a little bit of overview on aspiration smoke detection in general, and then we're going to go ahead and talk about an exciting new product, FAAST. System Sensor's recently launched aspiration detection product. So some of the topics that we're going to talk about, again, is just a general overview on aspiration smoke detector in general. We'll talk about some of the applicable codes and standards that are associated with aspiration. Some applications which may differ from traditional smoke detection, and then give you that FAAST overview, as well as really point out some of the differentiators between what FAAST can offer and the benefits that FAAST can offer over what's available today on the market. And then also just go over some of the other support materials, agency listings, and give you some other resources to reach out to get more information beyond this webinar. So we'll start off with, what is aspiration smoke detection? Aspiration smoke detection consists of an aspirator or fan which draws air into sampling ports through a network of conduit piping or pipe network. Once that air is drawn in, it passes through a filtering element and then into the sensor or sensing chamber for the purpose of detecting smoke. Now, typically or historically, aspiration smoke detection has used an infrared laser-based source for that early warning or very early warning. So why aspiration? Aspiration smoke detection does typically provide a reliable detection for that early or very early warning, which is required for many applications. The real focus here is that the concept of the detection is to detect the fire before it becomes a major risk, keep it into a minor risk, set a plan in place in order to mitigate that risk before any major damage could happen. We'll talk about some of the applications, but oftentimes this is used in applications where it's operating 24/7, so they just don't have any time for any kind of downtime or anything from a false alarm standpoint. Aspiration smoke detection also offers flexibility in placement and maintenance. Because of the fact that the true sensing chamber is there's only one of them, it can be mounted external from the protected space. This allows for easy access and maintenance of that device. So you think about applications where it might not be easy to get into the operating or the protected space. With the sensing chamber being remote, it allows for easier maintenance. Also, it's typically used in applications that standard smoke detection is just not suitable or applicable. You think about some of these examples might be extreme environmental conditions, high rates of air changes, such that standard type spot detectors just don't respond well to these environments, and then very large open spaces. Even though there's beam detectors and other types of specialty detection available, aspiration is commonly used in these type of applications because you can have that large coverage with only one device. So some disadvantages of aspiration. As we reached out to customers and really tried to learn more about aspiration in general, probably the number one thing we heard from them involved false alarms. Many systems are actually, although they'd like them to be tied into the fire system, or maybe they were originally set up to tie into the fire system, due to the amount of unpredictable false alarms, again, which this comes back to the early warning and the high sensitivity of these products, oftentimes they're run separately from the fire alarm system, just because of the fact that they just can't have the fire alarm system be that hypersensitive from that sensitivity basis. And what's basically happened is the industry has come to accept the fact that false alarms are going to be a part of very early warning and early warning type of protection due to the sensitivity levels that the product is set for. So with that, we'll turn it over to David for the first poll question.
All right. This is a time that we'd like everyone to participate. If you could, go ahead and click on the response that is most applicable to you or your business to the following question. Have you designed, installed, or specified an aspiration smoke detection system in the last 6 months? So what we try to do here is get a gauge on where our audience is, and it will help us not only with this webinar but in future ones. and we'd love to get about 80% of you to vote. We have 125 folks online with us this morning, so thank you for being here, first of all, and also thank you for voting. Andy, we've just crossed that 80% threshold, so I'm going to go ahead and close the poll. And as we will with all of our polls, we're going to share those back with the audience so you can see how some of your peers are also voting on these things. Andy, it looks like, similar to our webinar yesterday, about 2/3, 1/3, approximately 36% have been involved in specification design or installation of an aspiration smoke system, and about 64% haven't. So back to you, Andy.
Okay. Well, that's great. That means that, you know, it's great to have 1/3 or so that are aware of aspiration, dealing with it. With the 2/3 of the audience that is not, hopefully from this webinar you get a little better understanding, and also an opportunity to expand your offering or get more familiar with some other products in the market. So with that, we're going to shift gears a little bit and go talk about some of the codes that are applicable with aspiration. One thing to note is aspiration systems must comply with the codes, but are not required by any specific code. However, there are several standards that call out for a multitude of things that are highly applicable to aspiration type systems. The first of which is NFPA 72, or the National Fire Alarm Code. Basically, this just advises smoke detector spacing, and specifically in the high air movement areas, where they're basically saying that the area has to be reduced due to the high air movements. NFPA 75, the standard for protecting computer and data processing. This standard offers prescriptive and performance-based approach with aspiration and in smoke detection in general. It basically requires automatic detection for early warning of fire. And then finally, NFPA 76, which is the standard for protection of telecommunication facilities. Again, this is prescriptive and performance-based approach. However, it goes a few steps further and actually defines the levels of protection required in these applications. And that includes very early warning fire detection, early warning fire detection, and then just standard type detection. In addition to that, it also defines the detector or port spacing requirements, the average coverage, and also the recommended sensitivity or transport time from those points back to the actual sensing device or alarm condition. For example, in very early warning fire detection, the area coverage is reduced down to 200 square feet per detector, whereas in early warning fire detection it's 400 square feet. So it gives you some basis on that point. And then finally, ultimately, much like any other system, the AHJ is going to dictate the fire protection requirements regardless of whatever national or international codes might be applicable. All right, talking about some of the key drivers as we reached out to customers of aspiration products, that what they value, what they find as reasons why they're using aspiration. Number one reason was really prevent data loss. So we think about those applications, again, that are running 24/7, highly critical data, can't allow those systems to go down. They need to be running very, very reliably. Also, to protect the equipment from smoke damage. This is the reason why that very early warning is so important. It allows you to gives you that notification early on in the stage at the first elements of combustion, such that a plan can be put in place and to mitigate that risk before it reaches a major risk or evacuation, if you will. It goes hand in hand with the next bullet, minimizing the downtime and service interruptions. Obviously, preventing false alarms is very important. And also prevent, oftentimes aspiration systems are used in that single interlock, double interlock with suppression systems, such that you don't have unnecessary or a false alarm suppression dump of any kind of FM200 or those type of suppression systems. Prevent nuisance alarms. We talked about that. Again, it goes hand in hand with the false alarms. Trigger responses for different stages of fire. So not only do they want to have the ability to, get an alarm early, but they want different stages so that they can, again, set different plans in place. So you might think about it where, a certain alert level would notify local personnel but if you get into a higher fire rating or a higher fire stage, it would notify other people, perhaps even outside the building, so that they can respond accordingly. Preference for integrating into the fire system, of course, it's a smoke detector, so that makes very common sense. And then finally, obviously, in any system, a competitive price is important, and the cost to install and maintain it is also very important. But you notice that these are kind of listed in rank of order, and obviously the protection and the prevention of the data loss and the false alarms were predominantly the issues. The cost factors were less because we're talking about many applications where downtime can mean millions of dollars an hour on that order of magnitude. So, the cost of a device oftentimes isn't the number one priority. Okay, we'll talk about take it a little further on aspiration applications. We started talking a little bit about the first item, mission critical. So this would include your computer and data center processing, telecommunications, high-tech manufacturing, really these applications that are predominantly those 24/7 type applications. They just can't afford downtime, the mission critical type of applications. Secondary, the historical or applications where aesthetics are very important. So you think about these are museums, churches, mansions where traditional spot type detectors might be viewed as intrusive into the space and might affect the aesthetics of the space. So the great thing about aspiration system is you can run that pipe network above the ceiling and run capillary tubes or small sampling ports down to the protected space, and basically allows you to sample the space in a very unintrusive manner. Large public areas, so these would be shopping malls, stadiums, airports, and the real reason why aspiration would be used here is obviously large spaces, difficult to use standard detection to cover those large spaces. The other side of it is because these are public areas with large populations of occupants, by having that very early warning, again, allows the condition or the risk to be mitigated before it reaches a major level where evacuation would have to happen. And that can be difficult, especially when you're dealing with a population that maybe is in an unfamiliar space, a space that they don't reside in daily. And then finally, or secondarily, difficult environments such as cold food storage, poor air quality. This would include nightclubs, performing arts, or events such as, you think about a club or a theater or a Vegas show type of thing where they might be pumping fake smoke in for hazing and for effect. Because again, the sampling ports are in the space and the device is mounted remotely, it gives you some opportunity to keep the actual sensing chamber or the device separate from these environmental extremes. And then finally, security concerns such as prisons and hospitals. You think about these cases, they have a lot of the same requirements as the large public areas where it's difficult to evacuate. But in the case of like a prison, we're also talking about tamper resistance. So you wouldn't want to have an open area spot type detector in a prison cell, perhaps because of the potential for having be tampered with. Again, the pipe network can be mounted above the ceiling with a sampling port down to the ceiling, and for the most part it goes unnoticed within the space. In addition, hospitals, again, difficulty for evacuation, but in addition you have areas such as MRI rooms and those type of applications where spot type detectors just aren't conducive to those spaces, and aspiration detection is an ideal application for that product, for that space, I should say. So with that, we'll turn it over to David for the next poll question.
All right, Andy, thank you. And we do have two questions that floated in here that are very related, so I'll ask them at the end of the poll question here. The next poll question, for those that are involved in this, and maybe for those that aren't involved, but you're looking at a project coming up and you're just getting educated, where will you likely install or specify your next aspiration smoke detection system? Andy walked through a number of locations. We've kind of grouped them here together. If you do pick other, that could be other that's not listed above or other that I don't have any applications coming up. But if you could go ahead and vote, you have the mission critical cold storage airflow, high airflow, or that large open space atrium, airport hangar type facility, church or museum, prison or other tamper prone location. Maybe that could even be a school or whatever that might be. and then Other. So if you could go ahead and vote. We're at about 72%. We'd love to get that over 80% to get a good reflection of the audience as well. Okay, we just crossed that threshold, so thank you very much. I'm going to go ahead and close the poll and just share these results back with you. Andy, it looks like that mission critical cold storage high airflow is a clear winner at 55% of the audience. And because this is multiple choice, the responses don't add up to 100. The second choice is that large open space atrium airport hangar. So very good. I appreciate that. Andy, there's a couple questions floated in that are very similar. It talks about explosion-proof environments and if this detector will work, or are we working on a version that will work in an explosion-proof area?
Yeah, actually, this initial offering, which we haven't even got to the product yet, but the 8100 that is available and released today, it is not an explosion-proof rated product, but we are looking at other products or other devices that can be integrated in with the product to make it such.
Okay, all right. And one of our attendees that works a lot with the military wanted to point out that aspiration detection is required by the DoD under UFC 3-600-01 for data rooms that serve the base. So he wanted us to know that in addition to the code requirements that you talked about.
Okay, great information.
Okay, back to you.
Okay, thank you. All right, before we get into the product, I just want to give those of you who might be on the line that don't really have a good understanding or a familiarity with System Sensor, just a brief overview. The System Sensor has been in business for over 26 years. We really focus on continual product development and enhancement. Oftentimes, our new products obsolete our old products rather than having to try to leapfrog the competition. And we really focus on that, bringing the advanced detection into to our customers and really increasing their protection. You know, we have everything from smoke detection all the way through notification appliances and those kind of things. And just to give you a feel, you know, smoke detection and notification appliances are our life. We've been in this business a long time. So, you know, branching out into aspiration detection isn't a leap. It's a natural progression from our other products. In addition to that, highly or specialty and high sensitivity products are nothing new to System Sensor either. For years, we've had a Pinnacle laser-based intelligent high sensitivity detector or open area spot detector that we've actually have some good history within some of the same applications that we talked about for aspiration. And then in the last couple of years, we've also launched a high sensitivity duct smoke detector for very early warning. Basically, this product is our standard duct smoke detector, and it incorporates in a laser-based detector for that early warning. And then finally, in the last 2 years or so, we launched a new advanced multi-criteria detector. And this detector includes 4 different elements, detection elements, in order to ensure that a fire is really a fire. Basically, all of our tests show it is the most immune to false alarms of any detector on the market today. So I just want to give you that a little bit of flavor there before we go into FAAST, because it does speak to the fact that this is, you know, not something, not a leap for System Sensor, but rather a natural progression. So with that, let's shift gears a little bit and start talking about FAAST. Again, FAAST was launched roughly in the last 30 to 60 days. It's our first offering into aspiration. The standard model number is at 8100. It is a conventional device, and we'll talk about that a little further as we proceed. So if we start to talk about some of the areas that customers have concern, that number one concern was business protection. So how does FAAST address that? Well, FAAST provides the earliest warning. We state 30 to 60 minutes before combustion. Through some of our tests, we also view it could be hours or days before an actual, you know, traditional alarm or detector would go off. Unsurpassed sensitivity. We get all the way down to 0.0046% per foot obscuration. This is basically 3 times more sensitive than the leading competitor today. And the product is listed, UL listed for early warning and very early warning fire detection that we talked about with that NFPA 76. Probably the biggest differentiator for FAAST versus what's out there on the market today is the dual smoke sensor that we dual smoke sensor source that we use. Basically what we found is that, again, traditionally, as we mentioned earlier, most of the other aspiration products use an infrared laser-based detector. Through all of our studies and development, what we found was that laser detector is awesome for detecting dust. Great for detecting dust. In fact, probably better at detecting dust than smoke. So what we found was that a blue LED through our test actually covers the widest range of fires. So we're using that blue LED to detect smoke. We're using the infrared laser simultaneously to detect dust, and using advanced algorithms to actually discriminate between the dust and the smoke. So this is one of the areas that really kind of raises the bar for aspiration detection in general. So continue with business protection. What the FAAST product also allows you to do is deploy a fully customizable detection strategy or procedure if there is any kind of risk identified. We have 4 programmable levels. That's the most available of any aspiration product on the market. Most offer 3 or 4. These alarm levels all have latching or non-latching relays associated with them. And then each one of the relays can actually be set with a 0 to 60-second delay. And that delay is great because the combustion level is measured, and it must be continued to be present throughout that entire delay period in order to actually trip the unit or cause an alarm. The alarm detection is verified, again, minimizing the potential false alarms from transient or upset type conditions. The unit also has an acclimate mode. Some of you might be familiar with our acclimate detector. It's similar concept here, but we have an acclimate mode. And basically what happens is you're able to set the unit for a min-max sensitivity range, and it's basically balancing it versus the environmental conditions, and allows the unit to try to migrate as sensitive as possible, again, without making it too hypersensitive within the background environment that's going on. The other thing to note is that this acclimate mode and the entire burn-in period for the product is roughly 24 hours, and the competitive products can be upwards of 15 days. So it allows you to get the unit up and running much quicker. There's also an event log that tracks all events. So those events could include any of the 5 alarm conditions, major and minor faults, and any other user interaction can be stored as well. Then finally, we'll talk about a little bit further later, but the FAAST unit also has an Ethernet connection such that you can get email notifications of all the events, including alarm, fault, and any user interactions. Okay, here's an example of some of the emails. The upper left item is basically showing an alert, or that's the lowest level of alarm condition that can be reported. And the lower right example here is showing a fault condition. One of the things to note here is not only does it tell you it's a fault, but it actually gives you some discrete information as to what type of fault. Here you can see it was a high flow fault. So perhaps maybe there was a break in the pipe network, or the pipe network was upset in some fashion. And so the unit's actually seeing a higher flow rate than what it would be expected to based on the initial setup. So great information. Again, we'll talk about it further, but you can get this email notification so that, whether it's local or remote personnel, they can get this information and, again, put the proper protection plan in place. Okay? Second area that we talked about was the whole idea of the false alarms and nuisance conditions. So most of those customers just don't want any kind of business disruption. Again, going back to that dual light source, it goes a long way towards reducing the false alarms. Those dual light sources are analyzing particles for size, color, signature within the chamber, and again, using those algorithms to basically reject the dust. The other thing that we're doing is we're doing oversampling, or what we call mega sampling, of the particles to, again, verify that it's just not a one-and-done kind of thing. It takes more than one sample to ensure that we do have an alarm condition. And then there's ongoing signal strength monitoring also, and that is adjusted, again, to increase the reliability of the product and reduce the maintenance required in the chamber. Part of the false alarm immunity goes hand in hand with filtering with aspiration products. Again, you think about it, you're pulling the natural air in rather than just being stagnant in the space. So we're pulling that air in. We're going to be pulling dust in likely with the air. We're going through a little different fashion than most competitive products. Most competitive products are using just micron-based filters. We actually have a multi-stage filtering system in FAAST. The first stage would be a patented particle separator. This is what's shown here on the left. Basically, the airflow comes in from the top of the unit, and basically what it's doing is it's separating some of those larger particles that are not typically elements of combustion or particles of combustion, and separating those and exhausting those immediately before they ever get to the second stage filter or the sensor. So once we get through the patented particle separator, then the product or the sample goes through a replaceable 30-micron filter, and then there's also the electronic nuisance rejection through the algorithms between those two sources that we talked about, the infrared laser and the blue LED. So it's really 3 or 4 levels of this discrimination of the actual sample before it's deemed an actual alert or alarm condition. So one of the things we want to do, because the results were so dramatic, we had a third party run an independent test. Packer Engineering conducted a side-by-side test of FAAST versus a leading competitive product, size for size, like for like. And we went through basic 3 different kind of test scenarios. The first was a fire test, so just traditional fire type test that would be typically run. And both units alarmed, FAAST and the competitive product alarmed within 2 to 4 seconds of each other. So very, very similar responses. We then went a step further and ran a dust test. And in this test, we were using Portland cement, which is, can be a common byproduct, especially when you're using cinder block type construction in a building. The competitive product, when tested against this dust, false alarmed 9 out of 9 times. The FAAST unit was run through the exact same test scenario, and it was immune to dust 6 out of 9 times. Okay, so basically 2/3 of the time it basically rejected the dust, didn't go into alarm, and was sitting in a ready state of standby. Then we took it even a step further, and we ran a similar test where we introduced dust, and then simultaneously right after that introduced fire or elements of fire. And what we found was, again, the competitive product alarmed 9 out of 9 times. Because it was already an alarm, it never had the opportunity to go into alarm or detect the smoke. Meanwhile, the FAAST unit was, again, immune to the dust 6 out of 9 times, and then each one of those 6 out of 9 times, it went on to detect smoke. Okay? So that's what we're kind of coming up with FAAST based on this test and some other tests, is basically 67% more immune to dust-related false alarms. And again, if you go back to those key drivers for our customers, it was in the top 3 or 4 items that the false alarms are just so problematic when it comes to aspiration systems. Historically, obviously with FAAST, we think we can change that. All right, David, looks like time for the last poll question.
You bet, and we do have a number of attendee questions here, Andy, some of them related to exactly what you just covered there. So if we can, let's answer 1 or 2, and then we'll cover the rest at the end of the program. So the next poll question is, has dust been a problem with any of your aspiration smoke detection installations? We hear quite a bit about it, but obviously we're kind of probing for it. But I'm wondering, for those that have been involved, obviously yes or no would be the correct responses. And then obviously for those about 2/3 or so that were not involved in aspiration yet, the not applicable would be the correct response there. So if you could go ahead and vote. We're at 79%. We'd love to get that over 80, so if a couple more of you would be kind enough. There we go. Thank you very much. I'm going to go ahead and close the poll and then share these results back with you. And Andy, it looks like in 26% of the cases, dust has been an issue. 21% say no, and then obviously not quite our 2/3 again, but 54% says not applicable because they haven't had an installation. Andy, one of the questions relates just directly to the Packer study. Will that study be available for review by the engineering community?
Yeah, without a doubt. It's not posted yet, but shortly it will be posted on our website. such that it could be used to hopefully build some credibility and reliability with the A&E audience as well as with end users.
Yep. Okay. Good. And then the next couple questions are dealing with filter. How often would filters need to be maintained? What's the manufacturer's recommended maintenance cycle for filters? Is it field serviceable, or do they need to call a system sensor personnel? How would you like to address those, Andy?
Yeah, sure. We'll start off with the life of the filter. Due to the particle separator that is ahead of the filter, that 30-micron filter, yes, it is field replaceable. However, where most of the competitive products recommend or require a 2-year life on the filter, or for clean and replace, we're basically rating our filter at 4 years. And again, a lot of that comes down to the fact of that particle separator, which is really taking a lot of the burden and load off that secondary 30-micron filter. As far as service and maintenance goes, pretty much if you can turn a screwdriver, you can replace and maintenance that filter. There's no need to have a certified person necessarily come in and do that maintenance. Literally turn 2 screws and you can pull the filter cartridge right out, clean, replace, and reinstall it. The other thing that's great about it is we do have a reed switch on that filter assembly, such that despite the fact that our manual does recommend that the unit be shut down before servicing, if for some reason someone doesn't do so and they pull the filter out, immediately upon removing of the filter, the fan will actually shut down and the unit shuts down. So the nice thing about that is, while that filter isn't there protecting the space, other particulate could get pulled into the opening where the filter is removed. But with FAAST, it shuts down immediately to prevent that risk.
Okay, good. Why don't we continue with your presentation, and then we'll answer. We have about 10 questions in queue here. We'll answer any more that come in at the end of the presentation.
Great. Okay. Continuing on with FAAST, talking about reliability and peace of mind. We talked about early on that the customers wanted multiple trip or multiple trigger points for alarm. You can see here on this slide we have those 5 alarm levels, everywhere from alert all the way up through fire 2. There's also 10 levels of particulate indication. It's a little hard to see on this slide here, but those amber lights are numbered 1 through 10. And each level of those represents 10% of whatever the sensitivity of the alert level is set. Okay? So what's great about this is, although you're not going to get any kind of alarm until an alert level, if there's local personnel or remote personnel monitoring the device, and it's residing at a 1 or a 2 for days and weeks and that kind of thing, and then all of a sudden someone happens to notice that it's sitting at a 7 or 8, well, we haven't got to an alert condition yet, but it definitely gives you that kind of real-time status that, hey, something's going on, maybe we need to check into it or keep an extra eye on it standpoint. On the display panel also, there's fault indicators that give a broad range of a spectrum of events. You can see across the bottom is not only the airflow monitoring, but it also gives you all the status of all the different faults that could occur. So it's great because you get that discrete information. It's not a big troubleshooting project in order to figure out what's going on. It's pretty cut and dry. It'll give you some discrete information to address. The other thing is that FAAST does differently than any other product on the market is we actually do dual flow monitoring verification. So if you think about it, not only do you want to verify that the pipe network is good, we're using an ultrasonic system in order to check that the flow is getting to the device through the pipe network. But then we take it once, and that's what most other competitive products have, but we take it one step further, and then we're also doing a electronic verification across the filter and the sensor to ensure that not only is the air getting to the device, but it's getting across the sensor. Because you think about it, what good is it if the air can get to the device, but it's not making its way through the chamber? So we're doing both of those. And it should be noted also that if there's a change in the flow of 20%, you'll get a minor fault, and then up to 40%, you'd get a major fault or an urgent fault, meaning it needs to be addressed immediately. Okay, multi-level security. Not only can the touchpad that's shown here, the buttons can be locked out or password protected, but also within the software, which we'll talk about a little later, there's actually passwords whether you're you can set it either for a read-only or administrator. The administrator level, which can change the sensitivity and configure the product, requires password protection on that as well. And the other thing is there's really no extra hidden costs with the device. A lot of the competitive products, there's a bunch of other accessories and displays and those type of things that have to be added onto the device. We tried to make the FAAST unit as user-friendly, as comprehensive as possible, without having to buy all kinds of additional add-ons. Obviously, the pipe network is purchased separately, under different SKUs, but the device is pretty self-contained in that regard. Okay, reduced lifetime cost of ownership. This is where we were talking about a little bit of the maintenance side of it. Again, we talked about earlier the acclimate mode. It adapts to the environment within 24 hours, not 2 weeks or 15 days kind of thing. So again, from an installation standpoint, it gets you up to speed much quicker, gets the unit running and protecting in a much quicker fashion. It's suitable for retrofit installations with existing pipe networks. So the same size pipe network that would be the diameter that's in many of the other systems is the same size that we're utilizing, the 3/4 inch. Superior wiring access. This is one of the things that we heard when we did VOC with customers as far as competitive products. They said there just isn't enough space and room in the product to wire properly. You can see based on this image on the left, the whole left-hand side of the unit opens up for full access to the pluggable terminals. Makes it very easy to wire. There's 2 conduit openings in the top of the device, 2 conduit openings in the bottom of the device, so it makes it very easy for multiple trades to come in and wire to it if needed. Again, I already talked about it. We only have 1 filter. Some competitive products have 2. The reason why we can get away with that is, again, because of the particle separator taking so much of the load off the micron filter. Again, we already talked about it, but the filter is recommended to be changed every 4 years, which is really twice as long as the market leader. And obviously, depending on your application, if you have a real harsh environment, that may need to ratchet down much like any other maintenance schedule. We talked enough about, I think, the particle separator. Again, it's removing those major contaminants and really flushing them or exhausting them right out the exhaust before they get to the filter, before they get into the sensor chamber. The fan, we have 1 fan. It's rated for greater than 7 years of life. Most competitive products are on the 3 to 4 year life standpoint, so far more robust, more reliable product. Installation ease. The product ships with a mounting bracket. Again, we talked about how it's pretty comprehensive, all in one box kind of thing. It's very simple. Basically, four mounting bolts get used to mount the bracket. The device slides onto clips and is secured with some lag bolts. Something else that really sets the FAAST unit apart from any of the competitive products is we have an internal manifold design in the product. So what that enables you to do is the pipe network could be installed from the top of the unit or the bottom of the unit. And really, this really simplifies underfloor mounting. The competitive products actually in their manual state that if you have any underfloor networks where you have to bring the pipe up from the bottom, they recommend that you actually have to invert or mount the unit upside down in order to meet that requirement, which is obviously not very user-friendly when you're trying to look at the display screen and those kind of things and the unit's upside down. Again, FAAST has a manifold with pipe entries from the top or the bottom so that the unit is always mounted right side up and you can bring the piping in as required. We talked about the easy plug-in terminals and the conduit openings, and then again that burn-in time reduced from 15 days down to 24 hours. The actual capacity of the unit, the 8100 is sized for 8,000 square feet within that single chamber device. Most of the other things here listed, I don't want to confuse people, but when we talk about the maximum single pipe length, it's really just the way the agencies rate the product. Our product is rated to 262 feet or 80 meters, which is extremely comparable to what the competitive similar product offers. But to note also, if you do branch out that pipe network, again, that's more of a rated element. If you start branching the pipe network out rather than just having a single run, you can increase the amount of distance that you can cover. Obviously, you can't cover 10 lengths of 262 feet, but it does give you much more coverage than 262 linear feet of coverage. Again, that 8,000 square feet. The external pipe diameter is it's 3/4 inch. Different types of pipe that can be used most commonly would be PVC or CPVC. For those that aren't familiar with it, CPVC is that plenum / fire-rated PVC pipe. So it's orange in color, but looks very similar and acts very similar to PVC. Obviously, ABS, copper, stainless, any other type of piping that has that same nominal diameter. Something else that really sets FAAST apart is the integrated communication advantage that it offers. Again, it has onboard Ethernet, so it gives you a little bit more of a plug-and-play option with FAAST. It provides local networking capabilities, and you can monitor it not only locally, either at the display, but you can also monitor it remotely through the PipeIQ software, which we'll talk about a little bit further. And then also, because of the Ethernet, you can actually view it and take a look at the status indication virtually anywhere around the world via the internet. So it could be on your smartphone, on an iPad, laptop computer, whatever kind of web browser that you have available. The other thing that the Ethernet provides is it gives us this onboard email notifications that are allowed. And not only do they, again, we kind of talked about it briefly, but not only is it just the alarm level that's given, but any of the faults or isolate conditions that might be reported by the device can be sent up to 6 different email addresses. So again, you think about it, maybe that first alarm level alert might only be sent to a local personnel, but then you get into a Fire 1, Fire 2 condition, and it can go out to a host of individuals, could be remote or local personnel. Again, to set that different plan in place. There's dedicated terminals also for future SLC. Again, this product today is a conventional product, but we do have plans to bring out a intelligent or addressable product moving forward. The PipeIQ software, I'll note it here. However, I do want to mention, again, this was supposed to be an introduction today. We will have some follow-up webinars that will specifically go through the software, which is PipeIQ. PipeIQ is great because you can configure the device. You can do all of the designing of the pipe layouts within PipeIQ, and then it's the exact same software used to monitor the system. So you don't have to have multitude of different softwares to purchase depending on what aspect you want to be involved in it. Basically, everything's in PipeIQ. It's free. It can be downloaded from our website. It also is shipped out with each device, so there's not additional costs, and we talked about earlier. We'll really eliminate some of those add-on costs for accessories and software upgrades. And then finally, all the 8 relays are all Form C relays. Again, they provide that urgent, minor faults, isolate. They're 3-amp relays. They can be set for that non-latching or latching, and ultimately are configurable in that fashion. Okay, so kind of to summarize a little bit just on the product, we're really talking about a product with superior technology here. You have the dual vision detection, the blue LED with the infrared, rather than just relying on infrared, gives you that extra double level of protection, eliminating false alarms. The patented multi-stage filtering, so not only are we relying on a foam type micron filter, but we're also including the particle separator. Ethernet integrated communication, so Ethernet enabled, again, gives you those great email notifications. The PipeIQ software that's included allows you to do all the configuration, monitoring, and pipe layout. Intuitive interface, we spent several slides on looking at the actual the faceplate, which gives a lot of great discrete information that can be viewed at the device or remotely. And then that automatic calibration or acclimate mode, which eliminates the need to do all kinds of special setting and calibration. Lifetime lower cost of ownership. We talked about the fact that a longer life on the fan, longer life on the filter reduces some of the service and maintenance. And it comes from a world leader in smoke detection. System Sensor, again, has been in business for well over 26 years, a leader in smoke detection, and this is just one more example of such. And it basically, because of the fact that it comes from System Sensor, some of the competitive products, everything to them looks, or competitive companies, everything to them looks like aspiration because in many cases that's all they have to offer. With System Sensor, we're really looking to allow you to have the right device for the right application within the right job site, whether it be spot detection, beam detection, high sensitivity products, or all the way up to the aspiration type product. Agency listings FAAST today, we have UL listing for 268 as well as FM, and both of those listings I also like to point out include the DI or in-duct listing, so that the aspiration piping could be external in a traditional space or actually in the ductwork, which gives you some great flexibility. We have some of the state listings, California as well as Maryland State Fire Marshal, and ULC is expected shortly here in Q4. And then what we're doing also with the product is we have various other international agencies in process, and the concept behind FAAST is that we want to have one product that has international listings so that many of these customers, especially in the mission-critical applications, the AT&Ts, Verizons of the world, no matter where they have a site all over the world, they only have to really worry about one device. They don't have to worry about, you know, a multitude of different product and model numbers depending on where they are in the world. The product's going to carry all the listings within one device to make it as easy as simple for them. Beta sites. We do have a host of beta sites that are either installed or being installed currently, anywhere from a manufacturing plant all the way to that, if you will, that Vegas theater that I was talking about with dramatic smoke system, science museums, all the way up to a nanotech research facility. So you can see what we're trying to do is get the product out in a variety of applications, and again, try to build that for some case studies and testimonials, again, to allow people to get a little bit more comfortable, a little bit more understanding on the reliability and the credibility that FAAST brings to the marketplace. Finally, there's some additional resources. We have a website landing page like we have with most other new products at systemsensor.com/FAAST. The image here on the right is an image of that landing page, and it gives you a host of information that can be downloaded anywhere from the brochure to the Pipe IQ software that we talked about, all the way through engineering specifications. The other thing to note here is that we do also have informational video vignettes on the website, and we're going to continue to add those over the next couple weeks, such that if someone wants to know how to install, they could click on an installation video vignette, or if they just want some general information. It gives you a great opportunity to get up to speed and learn a little bit more about the product. So with that, I'll turn it over to David. But again, I would just want to point out this was meant as an introduction. We do plan to have several other webinars on FAAST, whether it be related to the Pipe IQ software and configuration and pipe layouts, all the way up to just some more technical-based webinars related to FAAST. So David?
Yep, very good, Andy. We do have a number of questions here. The first one, I know you addressed explosion proof and that we're working on a possible solution there. The question goes on to ask, is there one rated for any classified areas at this point?
No, at this point, from a FAAST offering, there is not. The current product is IP30 rated, but as far as, you know, Class 1, Div 1, Div 2 type of product, that goes hand in hand with the explosion-proof question earlier.
Okay, all right. The next question, it deals with training and certification. Are we offering any sort of official or authorized factory training, and does someone have to become certified in order to sell FAAST?
Okay. I'll start off that way about how we're going to bring FAAST to the market. We view FAAST as a little bit more of a technology-based product, so we do not have any plans to bring it through general wholesale distribution, but we will bring it through individual type distribution with a variety of customers, depending on which market you're in. And that kind of, because it's not going out to general, open wholesale distribution, it does allow us to ensure that people are trained and get up to speed properly. We don't have necessarily a certified course at this point yet. I will note, though, that we do A&E type seminars on the order of about 20 to 30 annually around the country, and FAAST and elements of FAAST in very detail are going to be integrated into that forum as well. So there will be plenty of other opportunities to get up to speed and learn.
Okay, very good. I think this relates to that question. If someone would need to purchase this or want to purchase this today, where could they turn?
Okay. Again, some of the fire system panel manufacturers currently have it accessible, including Notifier, Gamewell FCI. We're working with some more suppression-based companies, as well as some high-level OEM-type customers in the fire sprinkler industry as well.
Okay.
So it may not be as readily available as most other conventional products, and again, that's kind of the nature of the product, and the technology base just doesn't seem conducive to open distribution, but there will be areas. I would highly recommend anyone has any questions specifically ask, and we'll try to address those on offline.
Okay, all right. And again, they have your contact information so they can contact you directly. You mentioned, the attendees asking, you mentioned about smoke and dust. What about smoke and steam? And have we tested for that, and what sort of characteristics are unique for this device in handling smoke and steam?
Yeah, much like the dust side of it, the good thing with aspiration is when you do have steam-based applications, and it depends on if is that a periodic thing or is it a 24/7 thing with that kind of steam or humidity. The great thing with aspiration is because you do have day, night, weekend settings or the acclimate setting. What it will do is you can, if you have a specific time, let's say they're doing wash down or cleaning or something in a certain space, you could set the sensitivity or set the sensitivity higher for that time frame, where you don't necessarily always have that opportunity with other types of detection. So aspiration does lend itself to those type of applications better. However, much like an open area detector, if that steam is making its way all the way through the detector or all the way to the device in the sampling chamber, oftentimes steam can look like smoke. However, with the two light sources, the fact that if there's steam in the air and it has to travel through that pipe network, a lot of times it'll cool and the condensation will drop out before it gets to the device. We've seen systems where you can put in a condensate drain and those kind of things before it would ever reach the device, such that as it goes through the pipe network, that humidity and the moisture drops out of the air before it ever reaches the device. So I think aspiration definitely offers some advantages to those type of applications, but obviously, much like other applications, there is some trial and error that has to go into it, depending on the level and the concentration of that humidity.
Okay. The next question I can answer, the attendees asking if we'll send an email confirmation on their attendance today. Yes, we will. In fact, within 24 hours, we'll send you a thank you for attending along with a brief survey. And in about 2 to 3 days, we'll also put a certificate of attendance in the mail to you. I know some states require that to have some minimum training, so that'll be in the works as well. Andy, the next question, and we will take questions up till the top of the hour. We've got 4 or 5 minutes left, so we'll continue to use the full time we have allotted. Andy, the next question deals with maintenance outside of the filter. What is other typical maintenance that this unit will be required? And is there a point in time that the unit will have to be calibrated or recalibrated?
Okay. As far as I'll take the end one first, the recalibration. At this point, we don't view it as there to be a need to recalibrate the product. There would be if there would be any type of fan failure or any kind of aspiration, smoke chamber failure. You would get an urgent fault in that regard, and the fault conditions that were again on that screen with all the various discrete information. One of them's aspirator, so if a fan were to fail or something, you would get that information. Sorry, David, can you reiterate at the beginning of that question? It was on the service and maintenance outside of the unit, correct? Yeah,
well, service and maintenance outside of the filter. So aside from the filter, which you talked about already, what other maintenance is required, and then with the unit, does the unit ever need to be calibrated or recalibrated?
Okay, so outside of the filter, There really isn't any other significant maintenance. Obviously, the pipe network, much like an open area detector, it's a sampling point. It needs to be cleaned periodically. The nice thing about it is the unit does monitor that flow rate again through the pipe network. And typically you're going to see a pipe network with at least 5 holes. So if you have 5 or more holes, a 20%, or roughly 5 holes, again, a 20% change in airflow, expected airflow, will give you a minor fault. So you think about it, that would be 1 out of those 5 holes. It becomes clogged. You're going to get a minor fault. So that from a service maintenance standpoint, it's proactive in that regard, rather than just relying on periodic maintenance to keep it up and running. So.
Okay. All right. Next question is dealing with the piping network. And does the unit sense if the piping network gets bogged down? I think you answered that yes, because of airflow. And so the periodic cleaning of the pipe network is probably required depending on the environment, right?
That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct.
And then the second.
And again, outside of physical inspection, obviously the airflow monitoring is really what's going to also provide you some insight as to how often it needs to be cleaned and serviced.
Okay. Kind of related to that, then another question is testing and maintenance requirements per NFPA. Are there specific testing and maintenance requirements for aspiration that, say, may differ from spot detection?
Yeah, as far as, I know that question comes up, well, how do you test the system? Again, I'm going to lean towards the areas where we're talking very early warning or early warning. What it really comes down to is it's a time measurement of transport time, the time between when smoke's introduced to the furthest sampling point in the line until the time that the device recognizes the alarm. For very early warning, that's 60 seconds. For early warning, that's 90 seconds. And again, we didn't go through much on the Pipe IQ software, but once you lay out the network, the Pipe IQ software actually will help you lay that out, and it gives reports out to identify whether or not you're meeting your transport time requirements. And there's an auto balance button that you can click on that basically will make minor changes to the system. Usually it's enlarging, reducing a hole size somewhere in the end of the line in order to make sure that you're meeting all your transport time requirements. So again, the testing is just spraying smoke and then measuring that transport time.
Okay. We do have a couple unanswered questions, and to those attendees that have asked those, we will be getting back with you directly. We are at the top of the hour, and we promise to keep this within the hour. So on behalf of System Sensor, I do want to thank you for joining us today. As a follow-up, we will send you a brief survey and would appreciate your help in filling that out. And we do plan to reward one of you that completes the survey with a $50 Target gift card. Thank you again for joining us. This does conclude our webinar. Have a nice rest of the day.